Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Science Channel. Tonight, we drift inward into the strange and beautiful landscape of personality. That quiet constellation of traits, memories, and emotions that makes you utterly and uniquely you. Personality is the fingerprint of the mind, yet it shifts and shimmers like mist. It can be shaped by the genes of your ancestors or the pivotal moments throughout your life. Somewhere within it lives our courage, our fears, our kindness, our humor, and the hidden patterns that guide the way we love, think, and see the world. Science is still uncovering how all these threads weave together, from molecules to memories, from thought to temperament. So tonight, we will wander through that inner cosmos, exploring what makes each of us so recognizably human, yet endlessly unique. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, just breathe. Let your eyes grow heavy, and let the wonder of the mind cradle your thoughts. Let's begin. Your personality is partly written in your DNA. Deep within your cells, quiet codes whisper hints of who you might become. Certain sequences influence how sensitive you are to reward, how quickly you recover from stress, and how you process emotion. Genes guide the structure of the brain regions that regulate impulse, empathy, and attention. Yet DNA is not destiny. Every life experience, every friendship, every heartbreak dances with those inherited scripts, rewriting them through chemical switches that turn genes on or off. Scientists call this dialogue between biology and experience epigenetics, a living conversation that continues throughout your lifetime. Your personality is not carved in stone. It is a living echo of both ancestry and experience, always evolving as your cells respond to the world you move through. Identical twins raised apart still share uncanny personality traits. Across decades of twin studies, researchers have found astonishing consistencies between siblings separated at birth. Some share not only the same tastes in art or humor, but eerily similar life choices, from careers to the way they laugh. These parallels suggest a strong genetic influence on temperament. Yet the differences, small quirks shaped by unique environments, reveal the creative flexibility of personality. Genes may set the stage, but experience writes the lines. Even without shared surroundings, twins often mirror each other's emotional rhythms, decision-making styles, and reactions to stress, hinting that the architecture of personality has deep biological roots. At the same time, the individuality between them proves that nurture, context, and coincidence still sculpt something wholly singular. In every twin pair, nature and nurture meet like two artists painting the same portrait in slightly different light. The brain's wiring patterns predict how introverted or extroverted you are. Inside the skull, billions of neurons form intricate highways of electrical conversation. When scientists map these neural networks using functional imaging, distinct signatures emerge. Extroverted individuals often display stronger connections between reward centers and attention networks, making them more drawn to social stimulation and novelty. Introverted brains, meanwhile, show heightened internal connectivity, especially in regions linked to reflection, memory, and imagination. This inner wiring favors depth over breadth, quiet focus over constant engagement. Neither pattern is better, they represent different strategies for navigating the world. One thrives on external energy, the other on inner balance. Just as no two fingerprints are the same, no two connectomes are identical. Personality arises from the way these neural pathways hum together, forming the rhythm of thought that defines how each of us relates to others, to silence, and to the self. Your default brain network may shape how much you daydream. When the mind wanders, it activates what neuroscientists call the default mode network, a constellation of regions that light up during imagination, memory, and self-reflection. People who spend more time drifting into thought tend to have stronger connections within this network. It becomes a kind of mental playground, linking distant ideas and possibilities. Daydreamers are not simply distracted, they are rehearsing creativity, empathy, and problem-solving beneath awareness. Studies suggest that the quality of your inner world, whether curious or anxious, reflects the tone of this network's activity. In calm minds, it paints visions and insight in restless ones. It can amplify worry. The same circuitry that lets us drift through fantasy also helps us understand others, plan futures, and create art. In the quiet theater of thought, the brain rehearses countless versions of reality before a single word is spoken. Certain genes influence how optimistic or anxious you tend to feel. Among the many threads in our genetic fabric, a few help regulate neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, the chemicals that color emotional tone. Variations in these genes can tilt the balance of how easily we experience calm or anxiety, hope or worry. For example, people with a particular version of the serotonin transporter gene may respond more intensely to stress, while others show a built-in resilience. Yet genetics only open the door environment and learning decide whether we walk through it. Mindset, upbringing, and even nutrition can nudge these chemical balances one way or another. Optimism, then, is not a fixed gift, but a dynamic state that rises from biology meeting perspective. Your genes may whisper tendencies, but your experiences and choices determine the volume of that voice. Emotional outlook becomes a collaboration between molecules and meaning. Even a single letter change in DNA can alter temperament. The entire human genome is written in a language of roughly 3 billion letters, and sometimes a single misplaced one can ripple outward into behavior. A change in one base pair within a gene can subtly modify how a neurotransmitter receptor functions, influencing sensitivity to fear, novelty, or social reward. Though tiny, such changes can shift the chemical balance of the brain, shaping patterns of curiosity or caution. These molecular variations do not dictate destiny, they merely tune the instrument of the mind. Over generations, they become part of the evolutionary experiment of personality, offering diversity to a species that thrives on adaptation. In one person, that small variation might inspire boldness in another, careful reflection. Every human psyche carries countless micro-edits, each one a biological brushstroke in the grand portrait of individuality. Early childhood stress can shift personality development for life. When a child's world is filled with unpredictability or fear, the developing brain adjusts to survive. Hormonal systems that regulate emotion become hypersensitive, priming the body for constant vigilance. This can lead to adult personalities marked by caution, anxiety, or deep empathy for others in distress. Yet resilience often grows from the same soil. Supportive relationships, even with one caring adult, can buffer these effects, teaching the nervous system safety again. Over time, neural pathways once tuned to threat can be rewired toward calm and trust. The imprint of early stress may never vanish completely, but it can evolve into strength, an intuitive understanding of others' pain, or a fierce drive for stability. The story of personality begins not in fixed biology alone, but in how young brains learn to adapt to the storms or sunlight of their earliest world. Your personality can subtly change after long-term meditation. Prolonged meditation does more than quiet the mind, it reshapes its very architecture. Studies using brain imaging reveal increased thickness in regions tied to attention, compassion, and emotional regulation. As awareness deepens, people often report feeling less reactive, more open, and more patient. The practice trains the nervous system to pause before habit takes over, gently altering traits like impulsivity or neuroticism. Over months and years, the daily act of returning to breathe becomes a neurological rehearsal for equanimity. Personality, once thought stable in adulthood, bends slightly under the steady weight of mindfulness. Where once the mind chased thoughts, it now observes them. Where once emotions controlled behavior, they now pass like weather. Meditation, practiced long enough, becomes a quiet sculptor, reshaping temperament from the inside out, grain by grain, breath by breath. Sleep quality affects how agreeable or irritable you feel day to day. When the body rests poorly, the brain's emotional circuits fall out of sync. The prefrontal cortex, which helps regulate impulse and empathy, loses balance with the amygdala, the center of threat perception. The result is a shorter temper, diminished patience, and dulled capacity for connection. People who consistently sleep well show stronger emotional regulation and higher agreeableness scores in personality studies. Even small improvements in sleep, earlier bedtimes, darker rooms, slower evenings, can recalibrate mood and perspective. Sleep acts like nightly maintenance, sweeping away metabolic waste from neurons and restoring chemical harmony. Without it, our minds become fogged and reactive. With it, we rediscover kindness, humor, and perspective. Every dream cycle becomes a rehearsal for emotional balance, reminding us that a rested brain is not just sharper, but gentler. Gut bacteria may influence mood and personality stability. The microbiome inside your intestines forms a living ecosystem that communicates directly with the brain through the vagus nerve and chemical messengers. Certain bacterial species produce neurotransmitters like serotonin and gamma-aminobutyric acid, which influence anxiety, optimism, and resilience. When this inner environment is balanced, the brain receives calmer signals when disrupted. Stress responses heighten. Studies on probiotics suggest that altering gut composition can shift emotional tone and even social behavior in subtle ways. It is as if an unseen chorus of microbes contributes to the soundtrack of personality. Your mood, patience, and confidence are not only products of thought, but also of digestion, diet, and microbial harmony. Within the quiet depths of the gut, trillions of tiny organisms hum along with your nervous system, composing part of the music that makes you feel like yourself. Introverts actually process dopamine differently from extroverts. Dopamine is often called the feel-good chemical, but its job is really about motivation and reward-seeking. Brains that lean extroverted tend to respond to dopamine like a bright green light. Loud settings, surprises, fast-moving social energy, new faces and new chances all register as exciting and pleasurable. For introverted brains, that same flood can feel overwhelming, even stressful, like the volume is simply too high. Introverts often find that calm focus, depth, and meaningful conversation feel more nourishing than thrill or stimulation. This is partly because they rely more on slower, quieter neurochemical reward systems linked to reflection and understanding, rather than constant novelty seeking. So it is not that introverts secretly want to be alone because they dislike people. It is that their nervous systems are tuned to a softer game setting. They find deep comfort in stillness, gentle spaces, and connection that breathes instead of shouts. Both patterns are intelligent in their own way. One explores outward, one explores inward. The prefrontal cortex is more active in conscientious people. The prefrontal cortex, which sits just behind your forehead, helps you plan ahead, resist temptation, and stay organized in a complicated world that constantly tries to drag your attention in every direction. People who rate highly on conscientiousness, meaning they are reliable, structured, careful, and follow through on commitments, tend to show stronger baseline engagement in this region. That means their mental braking system stays available, so impulses do not always turn straight into actions. They pause. They evaluate. They ask, is this wise? This constant micro-regulation is part of why conscientious people are often described as dependable. They anticipate consequences before chaos arrives. There is a cost, though. Living in a state of constant forward planning can create pressure, guilt, or a fear of letting others down. But it also supports long-term goals, health routines, and self-respect. The prefrontal cortex is, in a way, the quiet guardian of promise-keeping. People who score high on openness have more cross-brain connectivity. Openness to experience is the personality dimension linked to curiosity, imagination, love of unusual ideas, and hunger for novelty. People high in openness often show richer communication between brain regions that usually stay a little more separate in others. Areas that handle logic begin to talk more fluidly with areas that handle emotion. Sensory regions that handle sound and color share information with regions that handle memory and language. This creates a flexible inner landscape where unexpected combinations of thought can emerge. Someone like this might hear a piece of music and instantly see colors in their mind, or hear a single sentence and leap to a whole new idea about how the world could work. This constant blending also explains why highly open people tolerate uncertainty. Where others see confusion, they feel possibility. Their brain is literally built to remix. It is a creativity engine that keeps generating new maps of reality. Neuroticism is linked to stronger emotional memory traces. Neuroticism refers to a tendency toward worry, tension, or mood swings. It is sometimes treated like a flaw, but in reality it reflects a particular nervous system strategy. In people who score high on neuroticism, emotional experiences, especially painful or threatening ones, are often laid down in memory more vividly and more durably. The regions of the brain that help store memory and those that detect danger talk to each other with extra intensity. The result is that embarrassment, loss, and fear can echo for a long time. That makes daily life harder at times, because even small stresses feel personal and urgent. But this heightened recall also grants something powerful. It creates rapid awareness of potential harm, social tension, or dishonesty. It builds sensitivity to the emotional states of others. It pushes the mind to scan for patterns, to anticipate problems before they bloom. What looks like nervousness is also a form of deep vigilance. Highly agreeable people show more synchronized brain activity with others. Agreeableness describes kindness, warmth, patience, and willingness to cooperate rather than dominate. When agreeable people interact, their brains tend to slip into a kind of resonance with the people around them. Neural rhythms in regions linked to empathy, such as areas that read facial expression and emotional tone, begin to mirror the other person. This is sometimes called coupling. You can think of it as two nervous systems stepping into the same emotional room. That alignment makes it easier to predict needs, reduce conflict, and offer comfort. It also explains why agreeable people can feel drained after spending time in tense or angry environments. Their minds do not just observe distress, they partially absorb it. The gift of agreeableness is connection and peacekeeping. The cost is sometimes emotional exhaustion. Underneath it all is a nervous system that keeps saying, I want us to be all right. Your handwriting may reveal small clues about your temperament. Handwriting is motor behavior. It is muscle plus nervous system plus habit frozen on a page. While graphology in the fortune-telling sense is mostly not supported by science, some subtle connections between writing style and temperament do appear again and again. People who write with heavy pressure sometimes score higher on intensity and urgency, as if their emotional signals move forcefully into their hands. People with small, tight, controlled letters often show caution, inhibition, or careful attention to detail, while very open, rounded, loose script can correlate weakly with sociability and spontaneity. Even slant matters. A forward lean can imply approach, engagement, eagerness. A backward lean can signal reserve. None of this is destiny, but it is a reminder that the brain is physical. Thoughts do not just live in ideas. They travel into shoulders, wrists, fingertips. Every loop and curve is a physical echo of how you manage energy and emotion. Personality can shift after brain injury or stroke. When injury touches the brain, it can alter not only memory and movement, but the patterns that make someone feel like themselves. A calm, steady person can become impulsive and blunt. A social and expressive person can become quiet and withdrawn. Sometimes the reverse happens, and someone who used to fear risk becomes bold, outspoken, and decisive. Damage in areas such as the frontal lobes can weaken inhibition and self-monitoring, which changes how the person expresses anger, desire, or sadness. This can be painful for loved ones, who may feel like they are talking to the same body, but not the same presence. And yet, there is another side. The brain is plastic. Over time, new pathways can form, and aspects of the old personality can return or reassemble themselves into something gently new. The self is not a statue. It is a moving pattern that can break, heal, and reconfigure. Musical preferences correlate with personality patterns across cultures. Music is emotion made audible. Fast, high-energy music with a heavy beat tends to appeal more to people who score high in extroversion and sensation-seeking. Slow, introspective, lyrically complex music speaks more to introverted and reflective listeners. People high in openness are drawn toward unusual harmonies, experimental structure, or new genres that most people have not heard yet. Conscientious people often like music that is orderly, polished, and predictable. What makes this astonishing is that these links appear not only in a single country or language, but again and again across different cultural backgrounds. Personality expresses itself in what feels good to the nervous system, and music is nutrition for the nervous system. The songs you return to when you are tired or overwhelmed are not random. They are regulation. They are how your emotional circuitry reminds itself what safe feels like. Even your walk can signal traits like dominance or openness. Before we even speak, other people are reading us. Posture, stride length, head position, shoulder looseness, pace, rhythm, and how much space we claim with our movement all offer clues. People who move with long steps, lifted chest, and steady forward gaze are often read as confident, dominant, even intimidating. People who walk with a relaxed sway, softer shoulders, and more fluid pacing are often read as approachable, creative, or open-minded. Fast, jerky walking with tension in the neck can be interpreted as anxious, overclocked, or impatient. These impressions are not always correct, of course, but the human brain is built to judge threat and trust almost instantly. Gait broadcasts state. Gait broadcasts intention. Long before language evolved, bodies were already talking. You send signals everywhere you go without trying, in every hallway and every sidewalk, simply by how you inhabit gravity. The pitch of your voice may unconsciously communicate confidence. Voice is a physical event. Air leaves the lungs, passes vibrating folds in the throat, resonates through the chest and head, and emerges shaped by tongue and lips. When someone is calm and certain, the muscles of the throat tend to stay relaxed. This often produces a slightly deeper, steadier tone that listeners interpret as grounded, even if the speaker is not actually more knowledgeable. When someone is anxious, tiny muscles tense, airflow changes, and the pitch rises. Listeners interpret that tension, often unfairly, as insecurity. This response is fast and unconscious. People also subtly mirror one another, dropping or raising their own pitch in conversation to try to match social energy. In that way, confidence is sometimes less about content and more about resonance. Your nervous system is always listening beneath the words, searching the voice for safety and authority. Certain smells can make people appear more trustworthy. Scent travels straight into brain regions that handle emotion and memory, skipping the slower, logical filters. Natural human body odor carries tiny chemical signals related to stress hormones and immune system markers. When someone is calm, healthy, and low in stress, those chemical traces can create a sense of safety and familiarity in others. Certain neutral, clean, or warm scents can also increase perceived trustworthiness in first impressions, even before a single word is exchanged. This plays out in social bonding, in early attraction, and even in cooperation. We tend to feel more comfortable with people whose scent signature quietly signals steadiness. This process does not feel mystical when you understand what the brain is doing. It is scanning for biological clues, asking a simple question. Am I safe with you? Long before you consciously decide whether you like someone, your nose has already voted. Eye contact duration influences how assertive someone seems. Eye contact is a biological negotiation. Hold a gaze too briefly, and you can seem nervous, submissive, or disengaged. Hold it too long, and you can seem challenging, intense, or even aggressive. In the middle lies a range that feels confident and respectful. Brains react strongly during eye contact. Heart rate can change. Pupils can widen. Reward circuits and threat circuits can both activate at once, which is part of why it can feel thrilling and stressful. Cultural background matters, because different cultures assign different meanings to direct gaze. But the underlying biology is astonishingly deep. We are social primates, and among primates, the eyes are social lightning. People who manage eye contact with calm timing are often judged as self-assured, capable, even leader-like, without ever having to say those words out loud. The eyes tell the room who believes they belong there. Micro-expressions can reveal genuine emotion faster than thought. A micro-expression is a tiny, involuntary flicker of facial muscle activity that appears and vanishes in less than the time it takes to blink. These flashes can betray anger, contempt, surprise, fear, or joy, even when a person is trying to hide those reactions. The brain launches the emotional response before conscious control steps in to smooth it or censor it. That means you sometimes see what someone truly felt for a split second before they decide what to show you. People who are very empathetic or socially observant become skilled at picking up these lightning-fast cues. Law enforcement and clinical psychologists sometimes train to notice them, but in reality, most people already read them at a gut level. It is the moment when you just feel that someone is not fine, even if they say, "I am fine, do not worry." Their face already told you the truth. Your choice of words reflects deep personality dimensions. Language is not only what we say, it is how we carve thought into sound. Extroverted people use more social words, more excitement words, more energy words. Introverted people often use language that is more precise, more introspective, and more sensory focused. Highly agreeable people lean toward words of care and warmth, while highly analytical people lean towards structure, logic, and control words. Even function words, tiny bridge words like and or, but or because, can hint at how someone organizes experience in their head. These patterns show up in texts, in emails, in casual conversation, and they tend to stay steady over time because they reflect stable habits of attention. The mind pays attention to what matters to it, and then the mouth follows. In that way, every sentence is a small behavioral fingerprint. You cannot help revealing how you think. People can sometimes predict traits accurately just by seeing your face. Humans are fast, almost shockingly fast, at forming first impressions. Within a moment of seeing a face, people tend to form guesses about warmth, dominance, openness, and even honesty. These guesses are not perfect, and they can be biased or unfair, but they are surprisingly consistent across strangers. Some of this comes from reading microtension in facial muscles, posture, and expression. Some of it comes from subtle cues related to hormone exposure in development, which can leave traces in jawline shape, eye spacing, and brow structure. The brain evolved to make snap judgments because, in deep evolutionary time, choosing whom to trust was a survival question. What is wild is that, even today, employers, jurors, and romantic partners all still respond to these instant impressions. Your face is not just appearance. It is treated by other nervous systems as early data about how to approach you. The left and right sides of the face can show different emotions. The two halves of the brain do not express emotion in exactly the same way, and each half of the brain largely controls the opposite half of the face. This creates subtle emotional asymmetry. In many people, the left side of the face shows slightly stronger genuine feeling, especially sadness or tenderness, because it is more directly shaped by the right hemisphere, which is heavily involved in emotional processing. Portrait painters through history, especially in classical and Renaissance styles, often posed subjects with the left cheek angled toward the viewer without consciously knowing the neuroscience, because that angle felt more soulful, more revealing, more human. You can even test this by covering one half of a photographed face and then the other. Very often, they feel like two slightly different people. We do not wear one single expression. We wear two parallel versions of our inner life at once. Animals can detect aspects of human personality through scent and tone. Many animals, especially dogs, are astonishingly sensitive to chemical and vocal signals that humans barely notice. Dogs can distinguish by scent alone between sweat collected during calm states and sweat collected during anxious states, and they change their own behavior in response. They also respond differently to voices that carry relaxed, confident rhythm compared to voices that carry agitation or fear. Horses, too, are responsive to human body tension and vocal energy, sometimes mirroring stress or settling when a human settles. This means your personality is not just something people experience. It is something other species can read. The animal is constantly listening to the music of your nervous system. If you are kind, gentle, patient, and non-threatening, many animals will approach more willingly. Not because of magic, but because their survival instincts tell them that your presence regulates their world instead of disturbing it. Digital avatars often mirror our real personalities more than we realize. When people create online characters or profiles, they often think they are inventing a new self. What quietly happens instead is projection. Introverted people are more likely to design avatars that closely resemble their real appearance, or that present honesty and approachability. Extroverted people experiment more with stylization, dramatic color, and bold clothing or posture choices that signal charisma, confidence, and attention-seeking. People who feel powerful tend to choose taller or sharper-looking avatars. People who feel vulnerable often choose softer shapes, gentler eyes, warmer palettes. Even the posture of a virtual character, open and expansive versus closed and guarded, tracks with real-world self-esteem. In other words, the avatar becomes a mood map. It is not random decoration. It is an X-ray of identity as the person wishes to feel or believes they truly are behind the shyness of daily life. Online behavior patterns can predict personality better than friends can. What you like, what you repost, how often you comment, which topics hold your attention, and how you use language on the internet all leave a trace. This trace can be analyzed by algorithms to estimate broad personality traits such as openness, extroversion, agreeableness, and emotional stability. In some studies, these predictions matched self-report questionnaires more closely than the guesses made by co-workers or casual friends. That sounds unsettling, but it makes sense. Algorithms are not distracted by surface charm. They are tracking repetition. Personality shows itself most clearly in what you choose again and again and again. Over time, your digital life becomes a behavioral mirror. It reflects not who you said you were in a formal setting, but how you actually behave when you are relaxed and unfiltered. What feels casual to you is, to a pattern-seeking system, a map of your psychological signature. Even the way you use emojis says something about your character. Emojis began as tiny decorations for text, but they have grown into emotional stand-ins for tone of voice, body language, and facial expression. People high in agreeableness tend to use warm, affiliative emojis such as smiling faces or hearts because they want to maintain harmony and reassure others that the message is friendly. People high in openness tend to use weirder or more playful emojis and sometimes combine them in creative ways to invent new shades of meaning. People high in conscientiousness often use emojis more sparingly, choosing clarity over flourish. Even frequency matters. Heavy use in professional spaces can signal comfort with informality, which often overlaps with extroversion and social boldness. In that sense, you are not just typing feelings. You are broadcasting how you relate to others, how you soften edges, how you invite closeness, and how you manage emotional distance in digital space. Personality shapes how time feels to you. For some people, a single hour feels long enough to hold a memory, while for others, entire days slip by as if time has softened its edges. Personality quietly alters this rhythm. Conscientious people tend to experience time as structured and measurable, dividing it into careful portions that fit their plans. Open and imaginative minds experience time more fluidly, as though moments melt together in creative flow. Those with higher levels of anxiety may feel each second stretch endlessly, while calm temperaments let time glide by unnoticed. Scientists studying temporal perception find that attention, emotion, and self-awareness all bend time's texture. When you are alert and focused, moments expand. When absorbed or joyful, they vanish. Personality sets the internal tempo that defines the pace of a lifetime. It is not the clock that moves faster or slower. It is the mind's pulse that changes its song. Risk-takers perceive time as moving faster. Adventurous personalities often feel that life speeds past in bright, quick flashes. When risk-takers face challenge or novelty, their bodies release adrenaline and dopamine, sharpening focus but shortening the feeling of duration. This is because intense stimulation floods working memory with information, compressing the sense of how long an event lasts. The result is a life that feels thrilling, but fleeting. These individuals are drawn to experiences that stretch emotion and ignite attention. They do not linger in hesitation. They dive into immediacy. By contrast, Cautious minds stretch moments out through anticipation and analysis. The difference is not just psychological but physiological, rooted in arousal and neural rhythm. Risk-takers live in fast-forward, not because they hurry, but because excitement collapses the space between moments. Their reward is vividness, a sense that every second burns brighter, even if it passes in a blur. Conscientious people tend to plan further into the future. Some personalities naturally look ahead, as though their thoughts lean toward the horizon. Conscientious people organize time like gardeners preparing soil months before the first bloom. Their prefrontal cortex, the region of the brain that manages goals and delayed rewards, stays more active during decisions about the future. This creates a sense of structure and reliability, but also the weight of constant awareness. They picture outcomes before they happen, balancing duty against desire. For them, discipline is not punishment, it is comfort. By planning, they soothe uncertainty. This ability to imagine steps before they are taken makes them effective at leadership, study, and perseverance. Yet even in their precision lies humanity. When plans shift, they adapt with quiet determination. Conscientiousness may make time feel linear and purposeful, but beneath it is a soft rhythm of care, guiding choices toward meaning rather than mere success. Neurotic people experience more mental time travel into the past. For those whose emotions run deep and changeable, time is not a straight path forward, but a loop that bends backward. People high in neuroticism often revisit memories, reliving them in vivid sensory detail. The emotional centers of their brains remain active during recall, so old experiences feel fresh, almost present. This tendency evolved as a way to anticipate danger, yet it can trap the mind in replay. Each remembered failure or loss becomes a rehearsal for future safety. But within that same sensitivity lies empathy and insight. Those who think often about the past tend to understand others with unusual depth because they are practiced in examining feeling. Their minds are both mirror and echo, reflecting what was while shaping what will be. With awareness, their introspection becomes wisdom, turning regret into reflection and memory into meaning. Extroverts estimate durations more optimistically. For people who thrive on energy and interaction, time often feels generous. Extroverts tend to underestimate how long tasks will take, believing there will always be space for more. Their brains, rich in dopamine activity, tilt toward anticipation and reward. The excitement of what might happen overshadows concern for limits. This optimism fuels enthusiasm and social engagement, keeping life full of movement. When they say just a minute, it often becomes 10, because joy stretches their sense of capacity. Introverts, who experience events with deeper processing and awareness, tend to measure time more accurately. Extroverts, though, benefit from their flexible perception. It allows them to take risks, to leap, and to fill life with stories. For them, the clock is a companion, not a constraint. The hours seem shorter because each one shines so brightly before it slips away. The way you remember your past reflects your personality. Memory is a mosaic made by emotion. Optimistic minds arrange their pieces into patterns of triumph, transforming hardships into lessons and perseverance into pride. Pessimistic or cautious personalities recall more of the difficulties, using them as guides for self-protection. Highly agreeable people hold on to moments of kindness and connection, while ambitious minds focus on goals achieved or missed. The result is not a record, but a narrative shaped by temperament. Every act of remembering is a form of storytelling, where your personality chooses what details deserve light and which fade into shadow. Scientists find that emotional bias during recall helps maintain a coherent sense of identity. The memories you cherish are reflections of the values you live by. The past itself does not change, but the way you hold it determines whether it becomes a weight, a teacher, or a spark of inspiration. Some people literally imagine the future more vividly than others. When asked to picture a future moment, some minds see every detail: light, color, even the imagined sound of footsteps. Others glimpse only faint outlines. This difference comes from how brain networks for imagination and memory communicate. People high in openness and conscientiousness show stronger connections between the hippocampus, which stores past experiences, and the visual cortex, which paints new ones. They borrow fragments of memory to build future scenes, almost as if rehearsing reality. Those who imagine vividly often plan more effectively and feel stronger motivation, because their minds experience goals as already half real. Yet vivid imagination can also amplify worry when those future visions turn dark. The same neural gift that fuels creativity can nurture anxiety. In every mind, imagination is both a map and a mirror, revealing not just what we hope to see, but how we see ourselves becoming. Optimists recall fewer failures, even when reminded of them. Ask an optimistic person about a setback, and they might smile as if it belonged to someone else. Their brains, particularly regions that regulate emotion, dampen the sting of negative memories. This selective recall helps maintain resilience and hope. It is not denial, but adaptation. By focusing on progress rather than pain, they keep motivation alive. Pessimists, on the other hand, remember errors more vividly, treating each as a cautionary tale. While this helps them prepare for future difficulties, it can also weigh them down. Optimists prune their memories like gardeners, letting wilted moments fade to make room for new growth. Over time, this bias toward positive recall shapes mood, confidence, and even health. The world they inhabit is no brighter than anyone else's, but their minds paint it with lighter tones, remembering the sunrise more than the storm. Pessimists focus on possible dangers, even in safe environments. The human brain evolved to detect threat before pleasure, and in some people, that vigilance never turns off. Those with more pessimistic tendencies experience heightened activity in the amygdala, which stays alert to potential loss or risk. They imagine obstacles long before they appear, rehearsing solutions to problems that may never come. This constant scanning can make the world feel uncertain, yet it also provides foresight and caution. Many engineers, planners, and safety experts thrive because of this precise awareness. However, if left unchecked, it narrows the field of perception until opportunity looks like danger too. Training the mind to notice safety, beauty, and kindness restores balance. Then vigilance becomes discernment, and caution turns into wisdom. The pessimistic mind does not seek misery. It seeks control in a world that often refuses to be controlled. Your sense of self-continuity links directly to your personality stability. Imagine your life as a book written chapter by chapter. For some people, the story feels seamless. For others, it reads like a series of unrelated tales. This feeling of connectedness through time is called self-continuity, and it depends partly on personality. Emotionally stable individuals tend to maintain a strong thread of identity, using memory to integrate the past into present goals. Those high in openness or neuroticism may feel themselves change more drastically from one year to the next. Scientists find that this difference involves the medial prefrontal cortex, which binds memories to the sense of self. When that connection is steady, personality feels grounded. When it shifts, life becomes an ongoing act of reinvention. Both states have beauty. One offers calm, the other renewal. The self, after all, is not fixed. It is a river that remembers its source even as it keeps flowing. Personality influences how strongly you feel emotions. Not all hearts beat with the same intensity. Extroverts often experience joy and excitement with greater force, their reward circuits glowing like lanterns in the dark. People high in neuroticism feel pain and worry more sharply, their amygdala holding onto emotion longer. Agreeable individuals absorb others' feelings, sensing happiness and sorrow as if through shared skin. Conscientious people modulate emotion with thought, calming themselves through control and perspective. These differences ensure diversity in how humanity reacts to life. Some people carry sunlight, others carry shelter. Together, they create balance. The strength of feeling is neither gift nor flaw. It is texture. Emotion moves through each personality like a unique melody, composed by the structure of the mind, but performed through experience. In every face, emotion's music plays differently, reminding us that even in a single moment, the human heart holds infinite variety. Extroverts show stronger reactions to rewards. When opportunity glimmers, extroverted minds light up before it even arrives. Their dopamine systems respond eagerly to novelty and anticipation, making social experiences and challenges feel invigorating. This neural sensitivity drives them to explore, to reach out, and to act quickly on curiosity. The world rewards their enthusiasm with connection and discovery. Introverts feel reward too, but their satisfaction often comes later in reflection or mastery. Extroverts, living at a faster tempo, chase possibilities with bright confidence. This optimism can lead to overcommitment or risk, yet it also propels progress and social cohesion. Each time an extrovert celebrates or shares excitement, the energy spreads, lifting those around them. Their joy is contagious, and evolution seems to favor that light. The reward itself matters less than the sparkle of pursuit, the way they make living look like celebration. Neuroticism amplifies threat perception in the amygdala. Within the brain, the amygdala is the guardian of safety, sounding the alarm at any sign of risk. For people high in neuroticism, this guardian rarely rests. It fires more frequently and with greater intensity, coloring perception with anxiety and caution. A brief silence in conversation may feel like rejection, or a harmless glance may appear as judgment. The same system that once protected early humans from danger now magnifies uncertainty in modern life. Yet this sensitivity also grants remarkable intuition. These individuals detect mood shifts, social cues, and subtle inconsistencies long before others notice. Through therapy, mindfulness, or self-awareness, the amygdala's alarm can be softened, transforming fear into attentiveness. What seems like fragility is often heightened perception. The neurotic brain sees the world with vivid alertness, and when guided with care, that awareness becomes wisdom rather than worry. Agreeable people process empathy through distinct brain circuits. The brain's mirror systems activate when we see another person in pain or joy, but in highly agreeable individuals, these circuits fire more intensely. Their anterior insular and anterior cingulate cortex, regions responsible for emotional resonance, engage as if the feelings of others were their own. This deep empathy helps them build trust, harmony, and forgiveness, making them natural healers in social settings. However, it also leaves them vulnerable to exhaustion, since constant resonance can drain emotional energy. Their kindness is not simply moral, it is biological. It comes from the way their brains blend perception and compassion into one seamless response. This sensitivity has shaped human cooperation across generations. Without such wiring, empathy might be an idea instead of an instinct. Agreeable people remind us that understanding another's feeling is not learned. It is felt, directly and deeply. Creative individuals have more crosstalk between emotional and cognitive regions. In creative minds, the boundaries between feeling and thought are thinner. The limbic system, which generates emotion, communicates more freely with the prefrontal cortex, where planning and reasoning occur. This neural crosstalk allows imagination to translate emotion into structure music, writing, invention, art. Creativity thrives on this union of impulse and order. Emotional charge fuels originality, while cognition gives it direction. Such brains tolerate ambiguity longer than most, holding chaos without panic until patterns appear. This flexibility produces ideas that seem spontaneous yet precise. Scientists suggest that this connectivity also explains why many creative individuals feel deeply and sometimes struggle with mood swings. The same pathway that brings inspiration also intensifies. Experience. Creativity, then, is the brain's way of transforming emotion into design, turning the private language of feeling into something that others can see, hear, and understand. High openness is linked to richer sensory experiences. Open-minded individuals often describe the world as brighter, louder, or more textured than others perceive it. Their sensory and association regions communicate more strongly, allowing perception to blend with imagination. A piece of music may shimmer with color. A scent may evoke entire landscapes. This sensitivity nurtures creativity and wonder, but it also leaves them more exposed to overstimulation. The same brain that notices beauty in a ripple of light can also be overwhelmed by noise or confusion. This vividness is both gift and challenge, a heightened awareness of the richness of existence. For these individuals, reality is never flat or ordinary. Every sound, every shade, every breath becomes part of a living symphony, but the rest of us may only half hear. The world does not change for them. They simply feel it more fully, as though life itself hums closer to the skin. People with low openness may filter out subtle sensations. Not every mind seeks novelty. Those lure in openness value stability, clarity, and control. Their brains act like filters, tuning out minor distractions to maintain focus on the familiar. This efficiency supports dependability and comfort. Predictability is soothing to them. It anchors their sense of security. In a rapidly changing world, these individuals provide the steadiness that progress often forgets it needs. Their filtered perception does not mean they are less perceptive. It means they direct their attention toward what they already trust. This focus allows mastery through repetition, excellence through precision, and wisdom through consistency. While others chase surprise, they preserve balance. In the ecosystem of human nature, they are the roots that hold the soil steady, while the winds of novelty pass overhead. Their calm refusal to be swept away keeps civilization grounded in the known. Some personalities experience awe more easily. Awe rises when the self meets something larger, whether the curve of a galaxy or the quiet perfection of a single leaf. People high in openness, humility, and curiosity tend to feel this emotion more readily. Their brains show lower activity in self-centered regions and higher in sensory ones, allowing them to dissolve briefly into the vastness they perceive. Regular experiences of awe reduce stress, foster connection, and encourage altruism. These individuals do not need grandeur to be moved. Even a shift of light or a sudden silence can awaken wonder. This sensitivity acts as a spiritual reflex, reminding the mind that it belongs to something immense and mysterious. Awe is not escape, but expansion. It teaches humility without words. In a world that often races forward, those who pause in awe are the ones who remember how infinite a moment can be. The capacity for wonder correlates with mental flexibility. People who still marvel at rainbows, ideas, and coincidences tend to have flexible minds that adapt easily to change. Wonder arises when curiosity overcomes fear. The brain releases dopamine during these moments, encouraging exploration and learning. Individuals high in cognitive flexibility allow this openness to thrive, shifting between logic and imagination with ease. They can hold uncertainty without frustration, which makes them more creative and resilient. This connection between wonder and adaptability means that amazement is not naive. It is a sign of mental strength. The ability to say, "I do not know," and still feel joy is one of the highest human capacities. Those who keep their sense of wonder live in a world that never stops unfolding. Their curiosity turns the unknown into an invitation rather than a threat. Wonder is the mind's quiet proof that growth is still possible. A sense of humor reveals more about your psyche than you think. Laughter is a mirror held up to thought. The kind of humor a person enjoys reflects the way their mind organizes surprise, tension, and truth. Those who love wordplay tend to process information quickly, delighting in incongruity. People drawn to gentle humor often possess high empathy, preferring jokes that unite rather than divide. Dark humor correlates with emotional stability, allowing people to confront pain with irony rather than fear. Every laugh is a release of energy, once spent managing contradiction. It signals cognitive agility and emotional health. Humor binds groups, softens hierarchy, and builds resilience. The joke itself matters less than the spark it reveals, the mind's ability to dance with discomfort. When someone laughs easily, it is not a sign of shallowness, but of adaptability. To laugh is to survive the absurdity of being human with grace, intelligence, and light. Dark humor appreciation correlates with intelligence and low aggression. People who enjoy dark humor are often more emotionally resilient and cognitively flexible than they appear. To find amusement in something grim, the brain must juggle irony, empathy, and logic all at once. It is a form of emotional multitasking that calls for sharp reasoning and a secure sense of safety. Studies show that those who appreciate morbid or taboo jokes tend to score higher on verbal intelligence and exhibit lower aggression. Their laughter is not cruelty, but distance, a way to look at what frightens humanity and turn it into manageable absurdity. The mind reframes terror as pattern, tragedy as puzzle. This act releases tension rather than feeding hostility. Dark humor may not soften the world, but it gives the mind a tool to face what cannot be changed and still whisper, "I understand the darkness, and I am still here to laugh." Sarcasm activates complex reasoning regions in the brain. Sarcasm requires a mind nimble enough to recognize contradiction and context simultaneously. When someone uses a sarcastic tone, listeners must detect the literal statement, identify the mismatch between words and intention, and infer the hidden meaning beneath. Neuroimaging reveals that this mental dance activates parts of the prefrontal cortex responsible for perspective taking and social reasoning. It also engages the temporal lobes, which decode tone and nuance. In other words, sarcasm is a linguistic workout. It strengthens the bridge between logic and empathy, forcing both to operate together. The ability to use or understand sarcasm depends not just on vocabulary, but on emotional intelligence and timing. A well-placed sarcastic remark says, "I know you know that I do not mean what I said." It is a spark of shared awareness, a tiny test of intellect and social harmony disguised as playful mischief. People who laugh easily tend to form stronger social bonds. Laughter is one of the oldest languages humans share. Long before structured speech, our ancestors used laughter to signal safety, belonging, and cooperation. Modern research shows that frequent, genuine laughter triggers the release of oxytocin, a hormone that deepens trust. People who laugh easily invite others into this gentle physiological synchrony, aligning breath and heart rate, lowering cortisol and diffusing threat. A single shared laugh can turn strangers into allies for a moment. Those who can find humor in ordinary life are often seen as more approachable, more forgiving, and more resilient. Their laughter becomes social gravity, drawing others near. The bonds that form through this rhythm often last because they are built on calm joy rather than constant excitement. To laugh easily is not to take life lightly, but to remind everyone around you that connection can begin with sound, not words. Personality determines whether stress energizes or exhausts you. Under tension, some people surge with energy, while others wilt. The difference often lies in baseline temperament and interpretation. People high in emotional stability tend to view stress as challenge, activating adrenaline in a focused, constructive way. Those high in neuroticism perceive stress as threat, triggering hormonal patterns that drain and destabilize. It is the same chemical storm, but filtered through different cognitive lenses. Optimists draw momentum from difficulty, while worriers lose reserves trying to predict what might go wrong. These responses are not moral strengths or weaknesses. They are survival styles shaped by early environment and inherited nervous system settings. Over time, mindfulness, rest, and supportive relationships can shift the reaction curve, teaching even sensitive bodies to channel stress into clarity rather than collapse. Whether energy or exhaustion follows pressure depends not only on the event, but on the inner translator interpreting it. Optimists recover faster from emotional setbacks. Optimism acts as emotional shock absorber. When disappointment strikes, optimistic individuals interpret the pain as temporary and specific rather than permanent and global. Their minds say, "This is a moment, not a sentence." That framing matters biologically. It reduces stress hormone duration and helps the immune system rebound. Optimists naturally engage coping mechanisms sooner, reaching for social contact, humor, or creative distraction. They allow themselves to imagine better outcomes, and that imagination becomes behavioral momentum. Even their neural activity reflects this pattern. Brain scans show faster return to baseline in regions linked to negative emotion. Over years, this becomes self-reinforcing. Each successful recovery teaches the mind that healing is possible, which builds further resilience. Optimism is not naive denial of hardship. It is a learned confidence that suffering can pass, and the self that remains afterward may even emerge stronger. Chronic pessimism can subtly shorten lifespan. A persistently negative worldview quietly taxes the body. When the brain constantly anticipates threat, it keeps the stress response slightly activated. Cortisol remains elevated, heart rate recovery slows, and inflammation increases. These small physiological ripples accumulate over decades. Pessimists often experience disrupted sleep, higher anxiety, and reduced motivation to engage in healthful behaviors. Yet the mechanism is not simply about outlook, it is about vigilance. The mind believes it must prepare for harm at all times, and the body obeys that belief. Over years, this permanent readiness erodes systems meant for repair. Interestingly, moderate realism can protect against both extremes. Balanced thinkers recognize risk without surrendering to it, allowing the body to rest between storms. Pessimism may feel like caution, but in biological terms, it becomes slow abrasion. Hope is not just comfort. It is maintenance for the machinery of life. Extroverts tend to underestimate risks and overestimate control. Extroverted individuals often feel more capable of influencing outcomes than they truly are. Their brains deliver stronger dopamine signals when faced with new or uncertain situations, which makes novelty feel rewarding instead of frightening. This chemistry encourages exploration and leadership, but also underestimation of danger. Extroverts may assume that charm or determination can outweigh structural limits, leading them to take bolder chances. Their optimism draws others in, creating energy and collaboration that sometimes compensates for risk blindness. However, the same confidence that propels groups forward can expose them to missteps if not balanced by cautious voices. The world advances through this dance between boldness and restraint. Extroverts supply the spark, reflective minds supply the map. When these two forces respect each other, progress happens without collapse. Confidence is beautiful when it listens. It becomes hubris only when it forgets to ask, what if? Conscientious people live longer on average than impulsive ones. Long-term studies show that conscientiousness strongly predicts lifespan. This trait involves reliability, self-discipline, and attention to detail, which translate directly into healthier habits. Conscientious people tend to avoid dangerous shortcuts, follow medical advice, and maintain stable sleep and nutrition routines. They are also less prone to addiction and reckless behavior. The cumulative effect of these small, sensible choices is profound. Their bodies experience fewer extreme stress episodes, fewer accidents, and better recovery from illness. Impulsive individuals, while often creative and daring, may push limits in ways that wear the body down. It is not about moral virtue, but about energy management. The patient planner conserves resources, the thrill seeker spends them fast. Evolution likely kept both types because society needs caution and courage in balance. Longevity tends to favor the cautious, but history often remembers the bold. Both serve life in different tempos. Impulsivity is partly heritable and partly environmental. Impulsivity begins with biology. Some people inherit neural circuits that fire reward signals quickly and inhibit them slowly. Their dopamine systems light up early, telling the body to move before full reflection. Yet genes do not write destiny. Environment sculpts how that impulsivity appears. In supportive, structured settings, it can become creativity, spontaneity, and courage. In chaotic or neglectful ones, it can become self-sabotage or risk-seeking. Childhood discipline, safety, and role modeling teach the impulsive mind how to pause without extinguishing its spark. Scientists describe this interaction as gene-environment interplay, the living conversation between inherited wiring and lived experience. The same trait that makes one person reckless might make another a brilliant improviser. What matters is guidance, not suppression. Impulsivity is energy in motion. With patience, that energy becomes invention rather than destruction, movement rather than chaos. Personality predicts financial habits and career satisfaction. Money and work reflect temperament as much as skill. Conscientious individuals often budget carefully, track details, and plan long-term. They draw comfort from order and delayed gratification. Extroverts gravitate toward roles involving social energy, teamwork, or leadership, while introverts thrive in analytical or creative solitude. People high in openness may invest in ideas rather than stability, choosing education, travel, or art over security. Agreeable personalities prioritize harmony, sometimes at the expense of assertive negotiation. Each orientation carries strengths and vulnerabilities. Success rises when occupation and personality align rather than conflict. A person who needs autonomy suffers in micromanagement, while one who craves structure struggles with chaos. Fulfillment comes when your work rhythm matches your nervous system. A paycheck matters less than the fit between task and temperament. Career satisfaction is not found by climbing highest, but by standing where you can breathe easily. Leaders tend to show high extroversion and low neuroticism. People naturally follow those who radiate confidence and calm. High extroversion produces visible enthusiasm, and low neuroticism allows composure under strain. These qualities together project stability, encouraging trust. Yet leadership is not merely loudness or stoicism, it is social regulation. The leader's nervous system becomes a template for the group. If it is steady, others synchronize toward focus. If it wavers, collective anxiety rises. This dynamic explains why extroverted, emotionally stable personalities often rise in hierarchies even when they lack expertise. They signal safety, and safety feels like competence. Still, effective leadership depends on empathy and adaptability as much as boldness. Some of history's most transformative figures were introverted visionaries who led through insight, not volume. In truth, leadership is not about time, but about timing. The moment decides whether the world needs a voice of fire or a whisper of calm. Creativity thrives in people high in openness and low in conformity. Open minds delight in novelty. They are willing to wander into ambiguity and return with strange treasures. When combined with low conformity, this openness becomes creative fire. Such individuals are less bound by rules, more comfortable with risk, and better able to integrate contradictory ideas. They find inspiration in chaos, where others see only confusion. Neuroscientists find that highly open people display more cross-communication between brain networks responsible for imagination and logical control, allowing unusual associations to form. Low conformity ensures those associations are expressed rather than censored. Creativity is therefore not random, but permission, the inner voice that says, "Try it anyway." Culture depends on this tension. Without openness, society stagnates. Without conformity, it unravels. True creativity lives between the two, breaking form just enough to let light in without burning the whole structure down. Empaths mirror others' facial muscles automatically. Empaths experience emotion almost as if it were contagious. When they witness someone's expression, subtle facial muscles activate in mimicry, often within a fraction of a second. This micro-imitation helps the brain understand what the other person feels by recreating it physically. It is an unconscious bridge between bodies. The process involves the insular and anterior cingulate cortex, regions that link sensation with emotion. Because empaths mirror so efficiently, they can comfort deeply, yet also become exhausted easily. The flood of borrowed feeling demands recovery time that others might not require. Strong empathy can therefore coexist with social fatigue. It is a reminder that compassion is physiological, not only moral. The empath does not simply imagine pain, they partially relive it. Their tenderness is built on biology, a nervous system tuned to echo the hearts around it. People high in agreeableness are more likely to forgive betrayal. Agreeable personalities value harmony and connection. When hurt, they often search for reasons before revenge, assuming misunderstanding rather than malice. Their empathy systems activate strongly, making forgiveness feel more rewarding than resentment. This trait can preserve relationships through difficult seasons, allowing reconciliation where others would cut ties. However, it can also expose them to repeated harm if boundaries are not learned. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting, it means releasing the desire to retaliate. For the agreeable person, this release happens quickly because conflict feels physically uncomfortable. Their nervous system calms only when peace returns. The same pattern that nurtures friendship can therefore trap them in lopsided bonds. True healing for them involves learning to forgive without surrendering safety, to maintain kindness without permitting cruelty. Their gift is mercy, but even mercy needs a door that can close. Narcissism can sometimes mask fragile self-esteem. Behind a narcissistic exterior, there often hides a fragile core. The boastful tone, constant self-reference, and hunger for admiration serve as defense against deep insecurity. For many, early experiences of neglect or conditional love taught that worth must be earned through display. The exaggerated self becomes armor, polished until it blinds others and hides the soft interior. When admiration fades, panic rises, because silence feels like erasure. Understanding this mechanism does not excuse manipulation, but it reveals motive. Narcissistic individuals are not simply full of themselves, they are dependent on others to maintain the illusion of solidity. Compassion toward this truth can help set boundaries without hatred. One can acknowledge the wound beneath the arrogance while refusing to feed the performance. Beneath the glitter and echo, narcissism is a lonely attempt to be seen by a mirror that never truly reflects back love. Psychopathy and empathy exist on a shared neural spectrum. Empathy is not a single light switch that is either on or off. It has multiple components that can vary independently. Emotional empathy involves feeling what another feels. Cognitive empathy involves understanding what another feels. People with psychopathic traits often have the second without the first. They read cues precisely, but remain unmoved. Brain imaging shows reduced activation in emotional processing areas such as the amygdala, but normal or even heightened activation in regions linked to reasoning about others' motives. This allows strategic charm and manipulation. At the opposite extreme are individuals who feel emotions of others too strongly, risking burnout. Between them lies the wide, normal range of human empathy, adjustable through experience and choice. The spectrum reminds us that morality does not rest on a single circuit. It rests on how understanding and feeling combine within the space of conscience. Highly conscientious people experience guilt more intensely. To the highly conscientious person, responsibility is sacred. When they fail even slightly, the internal alarm is loud. The same circuitry that drives careful planning and reliability can also create sharp self-criticism. Physiological studies show heightened stress responses in such individuals when confronted with errors. Their brains replay the mistake as if re-editing a scene that cannot be changed. The advantage is accountability. The disadvantage is exhaustion. Constant guilt can lead to perfectionism, insomnia, and emotional burnout. Yet their integrity keeps communities functioning. They are the ones who notice the forgotten detail, who finish what they promised, who cannot rest until the work is right. The world depends on them, though they rarely give themselves equal compassion. Learning to forgive themselves is their final act of duty, the moment when conscience evolves into balance. Humility correlates with accurate self-perception. Humility is often misunderstood as weakness, but it is cognitive precision. Humble people see themselves with clarity rather than distortion. They acknowledge strengths without exaggeration and flaws without collapse. Brain research suggests they experience less defensive reactivity when corrected, allowing learning to happen faster. This calm realism strengthens relationships because it removes the need for constant validation. Others feel safe near humility. It leaves room for shared truth. Culturally, humility sustains cooperation, preventing dominance hierarchies from consuming empathy. On an individual level, it protects mental health by reducing the exhausting chase for superiority. True humility is not pretending to be less. It is refusing to pretend to be more. It steadies the identity like a compass that points to honesty even in chaos. In that stillness, growth becomes easier because there is nothing left to prove. Confidence can be taught through repeated success experiences. Confidence is not mysterious. It is conditioning. Each time a person faces a challenge and succeeds, the brain stores that event as proof of capability. The more proof accumulated, the stronger the self-belief. This process occurs through reinforcement loops between the hippocampus, which records experience, and the prefrontal cortex, which evaluates outcome. Gradual exposure to manageable challenges builds enduring confidence better than sudden leaps. Even micro-victories count, such as completing small goals or keeping promises to oneself. Over time, these accumulate into quiet certainty. Confidence is therefore not arrogance or denial of fear. It is memory, organized into courage. Anyone can cultivate it through repetition. When failure occurs, reframing it as information rather than judgment prevents the loop from breaking. Confidence grows best not in perfection, but in persistence that teaches the mind to trust its own recovery. Personality shifts slightly every 7 to 10 years. Longitudinal studies reveal that personality is not static. Over roughly each decade, small yet measurable changes occur. Impulsivity tends to decrease, conscientiousness rises, and emotional stability improves. These gradual adjustments reflect learning, hormonal evolution, and environmental adaptation. The brain's plasticity allows new wiring even in adulthood, influenced by habits, relationships, and repeated emotional patterns. Major transitions such as career change, loss, or parenthood can accelerate the process, prompting re-evaluation of priorities. Personality does not vanish, it refines. The core melody remains recognizable while the arrangement evolves. This continuous soft remodeling is why people often feel wiser or gentler with time. Change does not erase authenticity, it completes it. The self you are becoming is not betrayal of who you were. It is the accumulated echo of every season you have lived, singing forward through a mind still capable of growth. Adolescence is a critical window for shaping personality. During the teenage years, the brain is undergoing one of the most dramatic remodeling periods of the entire lifespan. Neurons are strengthened if they are used, and trimmed back if they are not, which means experience is physically carving individuality into the nervous system. Emotional centers mature quickly, while areas for long-term planning are still catching up. This gap is why intensity and impulsivity feel so overwhelming in this stage. It is also why first love, friendship, embarrassment, and betrayal feel almost cosmic in scale. The social world matters more than almost anything else, because belonging teaches safety. Beliefs about trust, worth, power, and love are being formed at a cellular level. By the end of this period, the mind carries forward a style of responding to the world that can echo, softly or loudly, for decades. Personality tends to stabilize around the age of 30. In the early adult years, the mind begins to settle into patterns that feel familiar and repeatable. Habits of thought and emotion start reinforcing themselves, creating a sense of inner continuity. The parts of the brain responsible for self-control, planning, and emotional regulation have now matured fully, which helps reactions become more measured and predictable. Preferences become clearer. Values begin to feel non-negotiable. The constant shifting scene in younger years gives way to something steadier, almost like a center of gravity forming. This is also the point in life when many people report feeling that they know what kind of life they can live peacefully and what kind of life will cost them too much. The self becomes less experimental and more intentional, guided not only by possibility, but also by self-knowledge that has been earned. Major life events like marriage or parenthood can shift traits. Profound commitments reach deep into the nervous system and rearrange priorities. When someone joins their life with another person or becomes responsible for a child, attention naturally moves outward. The brain begins rewarding care, cooperation, and protection. What once felt optional now feels sacred. People who take on these bonds often find themselves developing greater patience, reliability, and emotional steadiness, even if those qualities did not come easily before. The sense of identity stretches to include others. Time begins to be measured in shared milestones rather than individual impulses. The nervous system even tunes itself to notice signals of another person's needs with faster sensitivity. It is not that the old self disappears. It is that new rooms are built inside it, rooms made for duty, tenderness, and the long, slow practice of staying. Trauma can compress personality into survival-focused patterns. When the body has lived too long in fear, the mind adapts by narrowing itself around safety. Curiosity fades because curiosity can feel dangerous. Spontaneity fades because surprises have not been kind. The emotional system becomes watchful. It scans for threat, even in places that are calm. This is not weakness. It is a survival response that allowed the person to endure what should not have had to be endured. Over time, however, this protective narrowing can begin to feel like a cage. Interests shrink. Trust becomes difficult. Life feels smaller than it once was. Healing is the slow and careful work of teaching the body that the story has changed. With time, support, and consistent safety, the mind remembers how to open again. Gentle moments of curiosity return. So does softness. The self that was forced to fold back in on itself can, one moment at a time, unfold. Long-term therapy can measurably change personality traits. Ongoing therapeutic work is not just conversation. It is neural training. Repeating the act of noticing thoughts, naming feelings, and exploring reactions in a safe space teaches the nervous system to pause before it responds. Over many sessions, the regions of the brain involved in emotional regulation and self-awareness become more coordinated. People who once reacted out of fear begin to respond with reflection. People who once shut down begin to stay present. People who once felt brittle begin to feel flexible. These are not illusions. They are measurable and lasting shifts in temperament. The mind learns that it is not helpless inside its own patterns, and that knowledge alone changes those patterns. Through this process, many people become calmer, kinder to themselves, more open with others, and less ruled by past pain. In this way, healing is not only relief. Healing becomes identity work. Moving to a new culture can reshape openness and agreeableness. Entering an unfamiliar culture is like entering another emotional climate. Social rules are different. What is polite in one place is distant in another. What is honest in one place is rude in another. The mind is forced to adapt not only to language, but to rhythm, pacing, humor, and expectation. This ongoing adaptation builds flexibility and perspective. It also makes a person more understanding of difference, because difference stops feeling threatening and starts feeling normal. Living in a culture that is not originally one's own often encourages patience in communication, creativity in problem solving, and humility in daily life. It becomes easier to see situations from someone else's point of view, because one has had to do so simply to exist. That repeated act of perspective-taking does not always fade when one returns home. It becomes part of the way the self navigates the world. Travel exposure tends to increase flexibility and curiosity. New environments stimulate the orienting systems of the brain. Unfamiliar architecture, unfamiliar food, unfamiliar sounds, and unfamiliar gestures all send a message to the nervous system that says, "Pay attention." That attention wakes up parts of the mind that routine can quietly numb. People who spend meaningful time in different places often learn to tolerate uncertainty and even enjoy it. Patience grows because travel teaches that not everything will go to plan and that this is not the end of the world. Curiosity grows because every moment becomes a small invitation to learn. Over time, this repeated contact with unfamiliar experience tends to soften rigid assumptions. There is less need to defend one way of living as the correct way. Instead, there is a growing sense that the world is many worlds, and that reality is much bigger than what one first knew. Aging often brings more emotional stability and empathy. With time, emotional storms lose some of their force. The body becomes less reactive, and the mind becomes more patient. This is not because feeling fades. It is because perspective deepens. After enough loss, enough healing, enough unexpected changes, the nervous system begins to recognize that states are temporary. Fear is temporary. Anger is temporary. Grief is real, but it moves. This quiet understanding allows a kind of gentleness to appear toward oneself and toward others. Older adults often report being less easily provoked and more easily touched. Compassion flows more easily because life has revealed how fragile people truly are. The focus shifts from proving something to tending something. Stability here is not a dulling. It is a soft but powerful steadiness built from years of surviving what once felt unsurvivable. Most people grow more conscientious with age. Over the course of adulthood, daily responsibility slowly sculpts the mind into reliability. Bills must be paid. Promises must be kept. Loved ones must be cared for. Work must be done even when energy is low. Each of these demands becomes a kind of training for attention and follow-through. The brain learns to plan, to anticipate, to consider consequences. Impulses are still present, but they are less in charge. The reward system itself begins to change. There is a growing sense of satisfaction, in completion, in order, in stability. What once felt like restriction now begins to feel like groundedness. For many, this sense of order is not about control for its own sake. It is about protecting what matters. With time, conscientiousness feels less like effort and more like devotion. Neuroticism usually declines later in life. Anxious thoughts do not disappear, but their grip softens. Repeated exposure to loss, uncertainty, and change teaches the mind that it can survive emotional intensity. The body gradually stops reacting to every uncertainty as an emergency. Stress hormones settle more quickly. The space between trigger and response becomes a little wider. That space makes room for choice. Many older adults report a deeper ability to let small things go without swallowing them. They save their energy for what truly matters. There is also a quiet shift from rumination to acceptance. The mind slowly trades the question, what if everything falls apart, for the gentler question, even if it does, will I still be here? With that recognition comes relief. The nervous system trusts itself more. That trust feels like peace. Certain personality traits predict happiness more than income does. Long-term studies across many places suggest that emotional stability, optimism, and kindness are more powerful predictors of life satisfaction than wealth. once basic needs are met. People who can soothe their own distress, reframe disappointment, and connect warmly with others tend to report higher well-being, even without high status or luxurious surroundings. This does not mean money is meaningless. Comfort matters. Safety matters. But after a certain point, temperament determines how experience is interpreted. Two people can live through the exact same day, yet one remembers support, humor, and small pleasures, while the other remembers insult, exhaustion, and threat. The way the mind filters reality becomes the climate in which happiness survives or withers. In that sense, well-being is not only about what happens, it is also about who is there inside to meet what happens. Gratitude practice can increase agreeableness over time. When a person repeatedly pauses to notice what they appreciate, the spotlight of attention slowly shifts. Irritation and resentment are not denied, but they are no longer the only story. The nervous system becomes more familiar with warmth. Feelings like tenderness and respect become easier to access. Over time, people who intentionally practice gratitude tend to become more patient in conversation, more forgiving after conflict, and less quick to assume the worst in others. Biology reflects this. Hormones linked to bonding rise. Stress responses settle more quickly. The result is not fake cheerfulness. The result is an easier time extending understanding. The inner posture tilts away from defensiveness and toward cooperation. What begins as a quiet nightly habit becomes a true personality adjustment, one that makes gentleness easier to offer and easier to receive. High curiosity predicts lifelong learning. Curious minds treat the unknown not as a threat, but as an invitation. That attitude encourages constant engagement with new ideas, new people, and new skills across the entire lifespan. Curiosity activates reward pathways in the brain, giving a small burst of pleasure each time something is discovered or understood. This makes learning self-reinforcing. It also protects against stagnation. People who remain curious tend to adapt better because they are used to updating their beliefs. They are also more resilient because they can turn hardship into a question and then turn that question into growth. Memory stays richer because new information keeps arriving. Empathy can even deepen because curiosity about the world so easily becomes curiosity about other human beings. The result is a personality that stays awake, flexible, playful, and alive, even in later years. A strong sense of purpose can buffer neurotic tendencies. Anxiety thrives in uncertainty without meaning. When a person feels guided by a purpose, even a small one, worry loses much of its ability to dominate attention. Stressful events are no longer just discomfort. They are steps within a path. Physiologically, this changes how the body responds. The stress response is still activated, but it does not spiral as easily. Focus returns faster. Recovery happens sooner. A clear reason to act gives the mind something steady to hold, which quiets rumination. Purpose also directs energy outward, towards service, craft, protection, or creation. That outward movement interrupts cycles of self-criticism. In this way, meaning becomes emotional scaffolding. It does not erase fear. It simply gives fear somewhere safe to lean until it can breathe again. Compassion training can increase altruism in measurable ways. When a person spends time actively practicing compassion, even in guided imagination or meditation, specific regions of the brain involved in understanding the feelings of others grow more responsive. Heart rate patterns begin to reflect calm and receptivity rather than defensiveness. Over weeks and months, this inner training begins to alter outward behavior. People become more patient in conflict. They interrupt less. They comfort more. They give without needing credit. This generosity is not about politeness. It is about nervous system readiness. The body actually becomes more willing to care. What is beautiful is that this change often creates a feedback loop. Acts of kindness strengthen connection, and connection deepens well-being, which further supports kindness. Compassion then stops being something you do and becomes something you are. People who express awe regularly report higher life satisfaction. Awe is the feeling of standing before something vast and realizing you are part of it. It can arrive in the presence of a mountain or a galaxy, but it can also arrive quietly while watching sunlight move across a floor. In moments of awe, self-concern softens. Time stretches. Breathing deepens. The mind stops gripping and starts receiving. Studies suggest that people who allow themselves to feel awe frequently experience less stress, more generosity, and a stronger sense that life is meaningful. This sense of wonder changes how they interpret everything else. Frustrations feel smaller. Gratitude feels larger. Even loneliness eases, because awe reminds the mind that it belongs to a world that is enormous, ancient, and alive. In this way, awe is not just an emotion, it is medicine. Personality affects how you interpret randomness and coincidence. Some people encounter a strange coincidence and feel that the universe is communicating. Others encounter the same coincidence and think only about probability. These differences in interpretation reflect stable styles of thinking and feeling. Individuals high in intuitive or imaginative styles tend to weave synchrony into story. They see alignment, meaning, guidance. Individuals who favor analytical thinking and structure tend to see charts, statistics, pattern noise. Both approaches are deeply human. One style transforms uncertainty into narrative comfort. The other style transforms uncertainty into logical calm. The way a mind explains an unexpected alignment of events becomes a kind of mirror. It reveals whether that mind rests more easily in wonder, or more easily in control, or moves somewhere gently between the two. Superstitions often arise from high pattern sensitivity. The human brain was built to detect signals that might mean danger, even if those signals later turn out to be nothing. Hearing a sound in tall grass and assuming danger was once a survival advantage. That same instinct remains, but now appears in symbolic form. When two events happen close together, the mind links them. If an outcome mattered emotionally, the link becomes sticky. Over time, the mind can begin to assign power to rituals, gestures, objects, or timing. People who have especially sensitive pattern detection tend to form and keep these associations more easily. The ritual then brings comfort, and the comfort reinforces the ritual. It is not simple superstition. It is ancient vigilance living inside modern thought, trying to create safety in a world that still feels unpredictable. Belief in fate correlates with lower perceived control. When a person believes that life unfolds according to destiny, choice can begin to feel softer, almost secondary. This outlook can protect against regret and guilt. If an outcome was meant to happen, then there is less room for self-blame and less anxiety about the road not taken. At the same time, a strong belief in fate can also lower motivation to act, because effort may feel less necessary. Psychologists observe that this pattern can bring comfort during chaos, but passivity during challenge. The most balanced place seems to be a quiet middle ground, where meaning is welcomed, but agency is still claimed. In that space, a person can feel guided without feeling helpless. They can accept limitation without surrendering participation in their own story. Personality influences how you experience art and music. Art does not live solely in the painting or the melody. It lives in the nervous system that receives it. A person who is highly open to experience may feel music almost physically, as color, pressure, warmth, or electricity under the skin. Someone who is highly reflective may use art as a mirror, diving inward and finding memories, future selves, and private longing inside a single sound or image. Someone who is highly energetic may seek rhythm, volume, movement, the pulse of being alive in a shared space. Another person may prefer intricacy and subtlety, the quiet turning gears of harmony and detail. The same song can soothe one listener and unsettle another. The same painting can feel like comfort to one person and confrontation to another. The response is personal, honest, revealing. In that way, art becomes a conversation between creation and character, spoken without words. People high in openness feel chills more often during music. The sensation of shivering during a piece of music is not random. It is the body's way of acknowledging wonder. When a person's mind is especially open to new experiences, sensory and emotional regions of the brain speak to each other with extraordinary intensity. Sound does not stop at the ear. It spreads into the nervous system, touching memory, imagery, and emotion at once. A melody that surprises, a harmony that resolves unexpectedly, or a voice that trembles with feeling can trigger an entire wave of neural response. Dopamine rises, skin tingles, and the listener feels the borders of the self momentarily dissolve. This physical reaction is more common in those who approach life with curiosity and imagination, because their brains are wired to explore rather than defend. Each musical moment becomes a tiny revelation, a reminder that beauty is not only heard but felt, completely and involuntarily, as wonder moving through the body. Extroverts prefer rhythmic music. Introverts prefer complex melodies. Every rhythm and melody connects differently to the nervous system depending on temperament. People who draw energy from social connection often gravitate towards songs that pulse with steady, driving beats. The repetition mirrors movement and interaction, activating motor regions that link sound to motion. Dancing, tapping, and singing along release oxytocin and dopamine, enhancing pleasure through shared experience. Those who find their energy in solitude, by contrast, tend to favor intricacy over rhythm. Their attention drifts naturally toward melody and harmonic subtlety, where reflection replaces motion. They often find deeper satisfaction in the shifting tension and resolution of complex music, where the mind can wander and the emotions unfold inwardly. Neither preference is superior. Each reflects a distinct way of balancing stimulation and serenity. Through music, the brain rehearses its favorite state, either the outward pulse of connection or the inward flow of contemplation that defines its sense of home. Personality shapes how you interpret abstract art. Standing before abstraction reveals as much about the observer as about the canvas. When the mind meets color and shape, without literal meaning, it must create its own. People high in openness often feel exhilarated by this freedom. Their brains activate imagination networks that fill the unknown with emotional and symbolic detail. They experience abstraction as possibility, a mirror for their own creative thought. More structured personalities, however, may experience mild unease at the absence of order. They search instinctively for recognizable forms, for a sense of control. This difference is neurological as much as psychological. The creative mind thrives in ambiguity, while the organized mind thrives in clarity. Yet both can find beauty there, if approached gently. Abstract art becomes a dialogue between chaos and comprehension, an external test of how comfortable one is with uncertainty and how willing the self is to find meaning where none is offered. Humor preference, reveals emotional resilience. The way a person laughs tells the story of how they cope with difficulty. Those who find joy in clever or absurd humor often use laughter as a form of reframing, a neurological reset that turns threat into play. The act of finding something funny releases tension in the prefrontal cortex and amygdala, soothing emotional intensity and restoring perspective. Dark or ironic humor, when genuine rather than cruel, can signal deep emotional flexibility. It shows that the mind has learned to survive distress without losing its sense of perspective. Gentle, empathetic humor reflects comfort with vulnerability and an ability to share feelings safely. Humor, in all its forms, builds resilience because it reconnects the rational and emotional systems after stress has pulled them apart. A single moment of laughter teaches the brain that lightness can coexist with truth, and that even pain can be softened by the shared breath of amusement. Those high in agreeableness prefer harmony in both art and relationships. The same neural circuits that respond to social cooperation also respond to musical consonance. For people who prize empathy, forgiveness, and unity, harmony itself feels rewarding. Their brains interpret smooth blends of tone and gentle color as symbols of safety and trust. Harsh dissonance can create discomfort, mirroring the unease of conflict in human connection. This is not about taste alone. It reflects a physiological link between sensory and social processing. The same systems that light up when people reconcile after disagreement may glow in response to chords that resolve gracefully after tension. Even visual art with flowing lines and balanced symmetry tends to bring comfort to those whose temperament favors peace. For such individuals, art is more than expression. It is emotional alignment. It satisfies the same craving that drives them toward kindness, mutual understanding, and the quiet rhythm of coexistence. People high in conscientiousness prefer structure even in aesthetics. Order, proportion, and intention hold deep appeal for those who value discipline and reliability. In art or music, this translates to an appreciation for balance, rhythm, and careful design. Structured forms reassure the mind that patterns exist and that effort leads to coherence. This is the same reward mechanism that encourages organization in daily life. Predictability offers calm, not boredom. Each measure of music or stroke of symmetry feels like a conversation between precision and patience. Neuroscientists find that conscientious individuals show stronger activation in brain regions linked to planning and pattern detection when they encounter organized beauty. Structure to them is not cold, it is promise. It tells the nervous system that meaning can be built piece by piece, that complexity does not require chaos, and that beauty itself can be a form of order translated into color, form, and sound. Creative personalities are more likely to experience flow states. The state known as flow, when time disappears, thought becomes effortless, and awareness merges with action is most common among people who live comfortably within imagination. Their minds are skilled at tuning out self-consciousness while sustaining focus. During flow, the prefrontal cortex temporarily quiets, reducing the voice of inner critique. At the same time, dopamine increases, enhancing motivation and pleasure. Creativity thrives in this equilibrium between concentration and freedom. Artists, scientists, athletes, and even skilled listeners can experience it. The brain behaves like a perfectly tuned instrument, each region harmonizing with the others in rhythm. This state can feel spiritual, yet it is grounded in biology. The more a person practices curiosity and openness, the easier it becomes to slip into that timeless awareness where effort fades, and the act of creation feels less like work and more like remembering who you are when the are. World is silent. Flow feels timeless because self-awareness quiets down. During deep immersion, the internal clock loses its authority. Neural systems that normally track time and monitor self-image reduce their activity, allowing the present moment to expand. The brain's attention networks align so completely with the task that there is no energy left for self-commentary. This absence of inner narration produces the strange sensation that minutes vanish or stretch endlessly. Physiologically, heart rate and breathing stabilize and stress hormones drop. Creativity and performance peak because no energy is wasted on doubt. When self-awareness returns, people often describe the experience as euphoric, though calm. The paradox is that by forgetting oneself, one becomes most fully engaged. This timelessness has been reported in every field, from painting to mathematics to meditation. It is not escape. It is union the mind and its work moving as one continuous wordless motion that feels infinite while it lasts. The drive to seek novelty is wired deep in the brain. Curiosity and exploration have ancient roots in survival. The same neurotransmitter systems that once pushed early humans to find new food sources or safer shelters now encourage the search for stimulation and change. Dopamine surges each time the brain encounters something unfamiliar, rewarding discovery and motivating continued exploration. This built-in system shapes everything from creativity to risk-taking. It is strongest in some people because of small genetic variations that influence dopamine receptors and reward sensitivity. For them, monotony feels stifling, and the unknown feels alive. Novelty seeking has guided migration, invention, and art for tens of thousands of years. It is both impulse and inspiration. At its best, it drives progress and wonder. At its most unrestrained, it can slip into recklessness. Yet the core instinct remains the same, a quiet biological reminder that life grows through reaching beyond the familiar. Adventure seeking may have evolved to spread human genes. Throughout human history, survival favored not only those who stayed safe, but also those who dared to wander. Individuals drawn toward exploration carried traits that allowed populations to expand into new lands, adapt to changing climates, and meet unfamiliar challenges. This restlessness became part of the species' emotional architecture. The same temperament that propels a person to climb mountains or cross oceans once guided ancestors to seek better hunting grounds or new alliances. Biologists have even traced this pattern to subtle genetic influences linked to dopamine regulation, which shape how rewarding novelty feels. While not everyone craves adventure, those who do often act as catalysts for collective growth. Their risk becomes everyone's inheritance. The human story itself is a record of curiosity moving outward, written by hearts that refused to settle and minds that felt most alive at the edge of the unknown. Personality influences dream content and recall. Sleep does not silence the self, it amplifies it. During rapid eye movement stages, the emotional centers of the brain remain active, while logic and inhibition sleep. The result is a theater where personality takes center stage without restraint. People who are imaginative by nature tend to dream with more vivid color, texture, and storyline. Those inclined toward anxiety experience dreams charged with tension, mirroring their waking vigilance. Meanwhile, reflective or conscientious individuals often report dreams that resemble problem-solving exercises. Memory systems consolidate by weaving real experiences into symbolic narratives, and the tone of those narratives reflects temperament. Even recall varies. Open, introspective minds tend to bring fragments back to waking consciousness, while pragmatic personalities let them fade. Each night's dream cycle becomes a private dialogue between emotion and identity, an unrecorded conversation where the mind quietly reveals what it believes about itself. Extroverts dream of social events more often. The dreaming mind reflects the world it knows best. For those whose energy flows through connection, sleep does not end the social story, it continues it in symbolic form. Conversations, gatherings, laughter, and shared adventures appear frequently in their dreams. The same brain regions responsible for empathy and social cognition remain active, constructing imagined communities that mirror real-life preferences. Extroverts often process their relationships and experiences through this nighttime stage play, rehearsing future interactions or revisiting recent ones. Their dreams may carry emotional warmth or excitement rather than isolation, serving as a kind of overnight renewal of belonging. These patterns reveal that dreaming is not only the brain's maintenance cycle, it is a continuation of personality, where even unconscious life prefers the same rhythm of human presence that fuels waking joy. Neurotic dreamers have more vivid nightmares. When anxiety is a frequent companion in waking life, it tends to follow the mind into sleep. Emotional centers such as the amygdala and anterior cingulate cortex remain highly reactive during dreaming, producing scenes charged with fear, loss, or helplessness. These nightmares are not punishments. They are the brain's attempt to rehearse survival, to practice responding to distress without real danger. Unfortunately, high emotional sensitivity can make these scenarios feel intensely real. People who experience chronic worry or rumination often wake with the same tension they fell asleep with, their bodies having lived through simulated turmoil. Yet these dreams also offer opportunity. By reflecting the mind's hidden conflicts, they create openings for awareness and healing. In therapy, understanding recurring nightmare themes often reveals the unspoken fears that drive waking patterns, transforming even distressing dreams into guides for emotional growth. Creative people experience lucid dreams more frequently. Lucid dreaming, the state in which a dreamer becomes aware of dreaming and can sometimes influence events, occurs more often in individuals with highly imaginative minds. Studies suggest that creative thinkers have greater communication between conscious and unconscious processing networks, allowing awareness to slip across boundaries more easily. In waking life, they navigate imagination fluidly in sleep. That same flexibility grants access to the dream world. Lucid dreams can feel astonishingly vivid. The dreamer might choose to fly, to compose, to explore. This heightened state activates both sensory and reasoning regions simultaneously, blending fantasy with logic. Many artists and scientists have drawn inspiration from such experiences, where invention feels effortless and emotion feels boundless. Lucid dreaming is not only a curiosity, it is a testament to how porous the walls of consciousness can become when imagination trusts itself fully, even in sleep. Some personality traits predict how likely you are to sleepwalk. Sleepwalking is a strange twilight state where parts of the brain remain asleep while others awaken. Research shows that people with strong tendencies toward impulsivity or external stimulation are slightly more prone to it. Their arousal systems activate more easily, even in rest, pulling the body into motion while the conscious mind remains unaware. Genetics play a role, but temperament influences triggers. Stress, irregular sleep, and emotional overload make the phenomenon more common. This behavior reveals how the mind and body sometimes negotiate control unevenly. The sleeper walks through the dark in partial awareness, as if personality itself is stretching between worlds. In morning light, memory often vanishes, leaving only traces of mystery. The event serves as a reminder that consciousness is not a single state, but a spectrum, and that even in sleep, temperament continues to write its signature. People high in openness recall dreams in greater detail. Memory and imagination intertwine during sleep. Those who live with curiosity and introspection tend to retrieve dreams with remarkable clarity. Their attention naturally lingers on internal experiences, which helps them notice and retain fragments upon waking. The hippocampus, responsible for storing new memories, shows heightened activation in such individuals during rapid eye movement sleep, allowing images to imprint more deeply. When morning comes, those imprints feel like vivid narratives rather than fleeting sensations. This tendency makes dreaming an extension of creative life. The same openness that fuels artistic expression during the day enriches the symbolic storytelling of night. Vivid recall can nurture insight as people recognize emotional themes or unresolved thoughts emerging from beneath awareness. Remembering becomes a form of self-study, a gentle way of learning the language the mind uses when words are asleep. Your sleeping posture can reflect emotional states. The way a body rests is a kind of silent language. People who curl inward often display protective instincts or high sensitivity. Those who sprawl openly across the bed tend to feel secure and assertive. Researchers studying sleep posture note consistent links between position and emotional tone. Fetal positions correlate with anxiety and cautiousness, while back sleeping aligns with confidence and openness. Of course, posture changes through the night, echoing the day's events. Tension in shoulders or hips may mark unspoken stress. Relaxed limbs often signal emotional peace. The body tells the truth the voice might not, revealing how safety feels from the inside out. Sleep positions are not destiny, but they are clues. They show how the unconscious body negotiates comfort and exposure, wrapping the self each night in the shape of its current story. Dream patterns may subtly shift after personality change. When the waking self evolves, the dreaming self follows. People who undergo major transformations through therapy, spiritual growth, or life events often notice changes in their dreams. Symbols once dark or chaotic grow calmer. Repeated nightmares lose their grip. Themes of control or fear may give way to exploration and curiosity. The mind updates its emotional scripts to match its new state of being. This shift is measurable. Sleep studies have shown that consistent personality growth alters the frequency and tone of rapid eye movement activity, as if the brain is relearning how to imagine safety. The dream world becomes a reflection of healing, showing progress long before it is fully recognized during the day. Night after night, the unconscious rehearses this newfound balance, gradually teaching the self that peace is not unfamiliar. It is finally being remembered. People who journal their dreams often become more self-aware. Recording the imagery of sleep strengthens the bridge between unconscious and conscious thought. The act of writing stabilizes fragile memories, transforming fleeting emotion into language the waking mind can study. Over time, patterns appear, symbols that repeat, fears that dissolve, insights that surface unbidden. This regular reflection builds metacognition, the ability to observe one's own thinking. It also enhances creativity, because the practice invites daily contact with imagination. The more someone writes, the more vividly they recall, forming a feedback loop of awareness. Dream journaling becomes less about interpretation and more about intimacy with the self. It teaches gentle attention, patience, and curiosity toward one's inner life. Eventually, even waking thoughts begin to carry that same awareness, making the person more attuned, more present, and more at ease inside the vast landscape of their own mind. Personality is a lifelong conversation between biology and experience. The self is never static. Every moment, genetics and environment, speak to each other in quiet molecular dialogue. DNA provides the structure, but experience edits the script, turning genes on or off through chemical signaling. The brain rewires in response to every encounter, every lesson, every kindness, every pain. Over the decades, this interplay creates the evolving pattern that others recognize as personality. It is not destiny written in the body, nor choice alone. It is a collaboration between what is inherited and what is lived. Even in late adulthood, the conversation continues. New relationships, loss, learning, and love keep shaping emotional tone and temperament. The miracle is not that personality changes, but that it can change endlessly while still remaining recognizably itself, a continuous voice growing wiser with each echo of experience. The mind is a galaxy of its own, unfolding and rearranging with every breath you take. Inside you lives a chorus of memories, instincts, choices, and quiet transformations, all whispering together to form the voice you call yourself. There is no single version of you, only the endless conversation between what was given and what was learned, between the body's design and the soul's response. Personality is not a mask nor a cage, but a living landscape that shifts like the sea, shaped by wind, time, and light. Each thought that drifts through your head tonight is a wave rolling across that sea, soft and unhurried. Each breath you take is a tide, drawing you a little deeper toward rest. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, just breathe. Let your thoughts grow light. Let your body sink into the stillness waiting beneath you. And let the waves carry you gently into the dark. Good night.